Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the posting of the colors, the invocation by Chaplain Allen from the 7th Sustainment Brigade, and the playing of the national anthem. The NCO Induction ceremony is a special ceremony formally marking the passage of a soldier into the ranks of the time-honored United States Army Non-Commissioned Officer Corps. Today's official party consists of the International Joint Command Command Sergeant Major Bond, the 10th Mountain Division Command Sergeant Major Greca, Joint Sustainment Command of Afghanistan Command Sergeant Major Riggs, and the 1225th Combat Sustainment Battalion Command Sergeant Major Taylor.
Long into their careers, sergeants remember reciting the NCO Creed during their induction into the NCO Corps. Nearly every NCO's office or home has a copy hanging on the wall. Some have intricate etchings in metal on a wooden plaque or printed in fine calligraphy. But a quick glance at any copy of the NCO Creed and you will see no author's name at the bottom. The origin of the NCO Creed is a story of its own. In 1973, the Army and the Non-Commissioned Officer Corps was in turmoil of the post-Vietnam developments in American military policy. The most influential in shaping the Army was the advent of the modern volunteer Army. With the inception of the Non-Commissioned Officer Candidate Course, many young sergeants were not skilled trainers of the past and were only trained to perform a specific job, squad leaders in Vietnam. The non-commissioned officer system was under development, and the Army was rewriting its field manual, 1225th Leadership, to set a roadmap for leaders to follow. Of those working on the challenges at hand, one of the only NCO pure instructional departments at the U.S. Army Infantry School at Fort Benning, Georgia, was the NCO subcommittee of the Command and Leadership Committee in the Leadership Department. Besides training soldiers at the Non-Commissioned Officers Academy, these NCOs also developed instructional material and worked as part of the team developing model leadership programs of instruction. During one brainstorming session, Sergeant First Class Earl Brigham recalls writing 3 letters on a white sheet of paper, NCO. From those 3 letters, they began to build the NCO Creed. The idea behind developing a creed was to give non-commissioned officers a yardstick by which to measure themselves. When it was ultimately approved, the NCO Creed was printed on the inside cover of the special text issued to students attending the NCO courses at Fort Benning, beginning in 1974. Though the NCO Creed was submitted high for approval and distribution Army-wide, it was not formalized by an official publication until 11 years later. Though it has been rewritten in different ways, the NCO still begins its paragraph with those 3 letters, NCO. It continues to guide and reinforce the values of each new generation of non-commissioned officers.
Red Cannon represents the Army, from the Revolutionary War to the present. White candle represents purity and innocence, as well as pure spirit and camaraderie.
The blue candle represents preservation and justice. Additionally, it represents metal to the core, the strength of the Army.
You know, I remember a mere 25 years ago coming in the Army and my role models. I remember standing in front of Staff Sergeant Stanley Salas, my first squad leader I ever had in the Army. And I remember looking at him and wanting to be like him. The way he looked, the way he acted, the way he talked, his technical and tactical proficiency, his physical fitness, and he was absolutely somebody to emulate. You know, years later I look back and I look at all the non-commissioned officers who have impacted my life. And truly I say my life, just not my career. To all the non-commissioned officers who are sitting out in front of me, the 40, if I could impart a few words of wisdom, it would be this. Number one, always lead by and set the example. Hey, by the way, y'all can look up here. Cool? I know you're all sitting at the position of attention, and I appreciate that, but please look up here. I will tell you, number one is to lead by and set the example. Listen, your younger soldiers either want to be like you or they're laughing at you, one of the two, I promise you. Be that role model for your soldiers that are out there. Again, that's from the way that you look, your physical fitness, your technical and tactical proficiency. So please remember, be the standard bearer. You know, I've met several non-commissioned officers and leaders throughout my career, and there's absolutely been a difference between those that manage and those that lead. In today's Army, what we're looking for is leaders. Leaders like Sergeant Bradley Krause, who was killed here in Afghanistan on 4 March 2002. Sergeant Bradley Krause was a leader of soldiers. And I'll tell you, to this day, I remember knocking on his mother's door about 4 days later to inform her of the death of her son. And the look in her eyes and the horror of a mother knowing that she's lost a child. My charge to all you non-commissioned officers sitting out in front of me, all the leaders, commissioned, non-commissioned, warrant, is to ensure that we train our soldiers and that we lead our soldiers in such a capacity that those accidents and those events might potentially happen, that they're not unpreventable, due to poor leadership and due to our inability to lead out there. There's been several role models, ladies and gentlemen, and I think it's important on this being Memorial Day to recognize some leaders, some other non-commissioned officers or leaders that have had an impact in my life. I first met Master Sergeant George Andy Fernandez back in 2000 when I arrived at 1st Ranger Battalion in Savannah, Georgia. Andy absolutely had that charismatic personality, that's somebody that you wanted to emulate. Soldiers looked up to him, his peers aspired to be like him, and leaders confided in him. Andy was killed on 2 April 2003 in northern Iraq as he was conducting missions as part of the United States Army Special Operations Command out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. To this day, I live with parts of Master Sergeant Andy Fernandez inside me. Master Sergeant Kelly Hornbeck. I met Sergeant Hornbeck when I was a drill sergeant back in 1993. He was one of my peers, a drill sergeant at 1st Battalion, 38th Infantry at Fort Benning, Georgia. Kelly always had a smile on his face. After the tragic events of 9/11, I was en route from England to Hungary. And the first person I saw on the ground once the aircraft landed and the events of 9/11 had already unfolded was Master Sergeant Kelly Hornbeck. Myself and Kelly talked about the events, what we thought that meant for both of our commands, the 75th Ranger Regiment and the Special Operations Command, and how we saw our futures going from there. I next saw Kelly in February 2002 here in Afghanistan, up in Bagram Airfield. He was a master breacher for Special Operations Task Force up in northern Iraq. Kelly was a role model, a friend. If anything, Kelly taught me the type of leader that you don't have to be old and grumpy, that you can keep a smile on your face, that you can have fun at what you're doing, that you can inspire, impact, and influence every single day those soldiers around you. Kelly was tragically killed on 18 January 2004 in Samarra, Iraq. He left behind 2 daughters and a beautiful wife. Captain Joel E. Cahill was a former prior enlisted soldier I also met at the 1st Ranger Battalion. Joel was a staff sergeant assigned to Regimental Recon Detachment prior to attending the Officer Candidate School. And Joel and his beautiful wife and 2 beautiful little girls reported to 1st Ranger Battalion, where he was assigned to Bravo Company. Joel Cahill will tell you, would teach you as non-commissioned officers to don't draw that line too thick between being non-commissioned and commissioned. We all have our roles and responsibilities out there on the battlefield, and Joel did not lead by his rank. Joel led by his abilities, his technical and tactical abilities, not having to remind soldiers every waking moment that he was a commissioned officer. His NCOs aspired to be like him. Others in the organization just simply looked up to him. Joel was tragically killed on 6 November 2005 in Iraq. He was a company commander assigned to 1st Battalion, 15th Infantry Regiment out of 3rd Brigade, 3rd ID. I met Sergeant First Class James Oshner when I reported as platoon sergeant to Fort Bragg in 1996. James was one of my squad leaders. Kind of always that smart alecky type guy that always kind of questioned the orders that were put out in front of us. You know, the one thing that could be said about James or Staff Sergeant Oshner was again, he had that dynamic personality that young soldiers just wanted to be like him. His proficiency, both technically and tactically, his physical capabilities, you know, he was always the fastest guy in the platoon. And just that dynamic personality and his ability to, again, impact, influence, and inspire. James was tragically killed on 15 November 2005 here in Afghanistan when he was assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 3rd SF Group, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And finally, as a brigade sergeant major, as a battalion sergeant major, I first met Staff Sergeant West. He was actually Specialist West, Matthew West. I proceeded through the battalion up to the brigade and subsequently became the 4th Brigade, 10th Mountain CSN. And Matt darn near simultaneously kind of rode that train with me up to becoming a rifle squad leader assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 30th Infantry. Matt, again, was one of those dynamic young leaders, that Sergeant Murphy type individual. The individual that younger soldiers, again, just kind of looked up. You know, when I was in Iraq, General Austin up in Corps had a sign in his office that said, "Inspirational leadership is required." And I used to sit back, sergeants, and I used to kind of look at that and say, you know, the funny part about that is I think there's very few leaders that truly know how to apply it. You know, and this ain't a knack on anybody sitting out there, but again, to all my commissioned officers, non-commissioned officers, warrant officers, leaders, sergeants, corporals, leaders of young guys and gals, again, inspirational leadership is required. It used to be called a referent form of power, and I promise you this, Staff Sergeant Matthew J. West had it. Matt was shot and killed on 30 August 2010, one of my last fatalities that I had as a brigade command sergeant major prior to redeploying that brigade. Ladies and gentlemen, I just tried to show a short impact, you know, with 6 non-commissioned officers that influenced, inspired, and kind of impacted my life. To the 40 non-commissioned officers that are sitting out here in front of me, certainly as we remember today being Memorial Days, and those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice, it doesn't take paying the ultimate sacrifice to obviously be that dynamic leader and role model for your soldiers. You know, I've charged all non-commissioned officers here within the Regional Command South that, hey, let's ensure that we do all that we can to bring all these guys and gals home to their mothers, fathers, wives, husbands, and children, because our nation expects nothing but the best from us non-commissioned officers and leaders throughout this command. Every night when you put your head on the pillow, my charge to you is have influenced somebody. Have one soldier internal to your formation that when you go to sleep at night, you've influenced them for that given day. And I promise you, if you do that over the course of 365 days, that's 1 year's worth of lives that you've influenced and impacted and inspired. I promise you, you'll make a difference, not only to this great brigade, not only to this great regional command, but this United States Army of ours. God bless everybody. Have a great day. Climb to glory. Thank you.
The non-commissioned officers will now be formally inducted into the Non-Commissioned Officer Corps. The tradition of commemorating the passing of a soldier to a non-commissioned officer can be traced to the Army of Frederick the Great. Before one could be recognized in full status of NCO, he was required to stand 4 watches, one every 4 days. At the first watch, the private soldiers appeared and claimed a gift of bread and brandy. The company NCOs came to the second watch for beer and tobacco. The first sergeant reserved his visit for the third watch, when he was presented with a glass of wine and a piece of tobacco on a tin plate. It was during the fourth watch that the NCO figuratively crossed the time-honored line and joined the NCO Corps. Today, we commemorate this rite of passage as a celebration of the newly promoted joining the ranks of a professional non-commissioned officer corps, and emphasize and build on the pride we all share as members of such an elite corps. We also serve to honor the memory of those men and women of the NCO Corps who have served with pride and distinction. In keeping with the traditions of the NCO Corps, each inductee will receive a personalized copy of the NCO Creed and the NCO Charge presented to them by the Battalion Command Sergeant Major.
Who will sponsor these non-commissioned officers into non-commissioned officer corps?
Command Sergeant Major, I pass Sergeant Edwards. I would like to sponsor NCOs, 695 Transportation Company, and non-commissioned officer corps.
Inductees, cross the line into non-commissioned officer corps.
I am Sergeant First Class Williams. I will sponsor the NCOs of the 1225th CSSB into the ranks of the non-commissioned officer corps.
Who will sponsor these non-commissioned officers into non-commissioned officer corps?
Command Sergeant Major, I am Sergeant First Class Warner, and I would like to sponsor this NCO of the 592nd Ordnance Company into the ranks of the non-commissioned officer corps.
Command Sergeant Major, I am Sergeant First Class Jimenez, and I would like to sponsor the NCOs from the 297th ICTC into the ranks of the non-commissioned officer corps. Inductees, cross the line into the non-commissioned officer corps.
got 40 non-commissioned officers that have been inducted today, so I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to help us out with the induction today. It is with great pride that I bring to you some of our great young leaders of the future. We have assembled today to recognize as junior non-commissioned officers that they step through the rites of passage and into the NCO ranks. The Creed of non-commissioned officer was established in 1973 at Fort Benning, Georgia. From that point in our military history to our current position here on the battlefield, one thing stands clear. The non-commissioned officer is without a doubt the most important and respected asset the U.S. Army has in its arsenal. Let it be known that these newly inducted non-commissioned officers that have taken responsibility to accept the new challenges and will continue to take charge of the careers and will accept responsibility for their actions, good or bad, in the future. The importance of crossing over from an enlisted soldier to a non-commissioned officer is a milestone in an enlisted soldier's career and should not be taken lightly. It is the responsibility of senior non-commissioned officers to ensure we continue this tradition for many years to come. This day, back in 1869, previously known as Decoration Day, Memorial Day was developed to pay honors and respect for those who have served and given the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. As we review the table of remembrance today, we must never let these newly inducted non-commissioned officers forget how they were given this opportunity from our fallen heroes. I need for all of you to celebrate this joyous occasion, but never forget who had given you this opportunity. I have a quote I'd like to share with all of you today. We would be much better served if we could do a better job of accentuating the positive, pat that young NCO on the back when he does it right. Better yet, have the guts to underwrite NCO mistakes and back up our junior non-commissioned officers. Finally, look for solutions and suggest them instead of problems to our commanders. In closing, I would like to thank all of our junior leaders here today for the hard work on getting inducted in the NCO ranks. I will challenge our senior leaders to help you enforce standards and keep good order and conduct and discipline within your formation, and never let you waver from the Army values. Good luck to every one of you. Godspeed.